Hello, Waffle lovers, and welcome back to another episode of Whatever Flips Your Waffle on 365sportscast.com. I'm your host, Mark Domeyer, coming to you once again from the bunker deep in the heart of southern Minnesota. The thaw is here, the rain is here, and the hot stove league is as hot as it's ever been for Minnesota Twins baseball. Glad you've joined us again this week. We're going to talk Minnesota sports for this entire hour. Welcome to those of you who have tuned in previous weeks, and also a very special welcome if you are tuning in for the very first time. I had one of my students suggest to me, hey, Mr. Domeyer, I need more pizzazz if I'm going to watch you when you are on YouTube, because, of course, if you can't join us live, this does archive to YouTube, and some of you are watching it there. He said, I need to see something more than your Waffle logo floating there in space. So we're going to try this. You can look at my made-for-radio face as I record this. We'll keep that on there. Maybe, Ryan, that will be the pizzazz that you are looking for. Maybe not. When I do my interviews, however, those will have that wonderful Waffle logo floating there that one of my former students, Eden Eade, so nicely designed for me, since that is not recorded video-wise. I'm really excited this week. I got a chance to interview Shane Moore, host of Triple Play Tuesdays. That's also here on 365sportscast.com, 7 o'clock Central Time. He talks Minnesota sports as well, and we had a great conversation about all the fantastic things going on in Minnesota sports right now. So after this brief commercial break, I'll be back with that interview with Shane. Stick around. Looking to visit New Ulm, Minnesota? If you are going to this historic destination, why not stay somewhere historic while you're there? Check out the Holiday House or the Holiday House Zwei at Airbnb or Vrbo. Now, if you're not familiar with German and that, when you're looking up house, you're looking up H-A-U-S. That's how they spell it in German. And Zwei is 2, Z-W-E-I. So check those out at Airbnb or Vrbo. These two houses, you can have between 8 to 12 guests, and they're nearly 100 years old. The houses, not your guests, I don't think. Plenty of modern amenities are provided, but you will feel like you are swept back in time. Plus, you'll be close to the exciting downtown area of New Ulm. Plenty of shopping, restaurants, coffee shops, bars, parks, much, much more. Shara is your hostess, and she's got top ratings for these houses and has rates that will make you rethink staying in a hotel. So visit New Ulm, Minnesota, and check out the Holiday House and the Holiday House Zwei for a great place to stay. My guest this week here on Whatever Flips Your Waffle is Shane Moore. He has a show here on 365sportscast.com as well. Triple Play Tuesdays. Tuesday nights. I think it's 7 o'clock Central. Is that right, Shane?
That's right, yeah.
All right. Well, Shane, welcome. Thanks for joining us here this week on the program.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mark. I appreciate having me on. I'm really excited to be here and excited to be chatting to folks on Wednesday night.
Yeah, so we'll do a little cross promotion thing here, and Shane talks about Minnesota sports, just like we do here every week as well. And so it's always good to get different perspectives on things. And we're going to start with this, Shane. I know same thing probably happened for you, but as for me. But tell me, when you woke up this past Saturday morning and looked at your phone, looked at wherever you get your news and information, your reaction to the Minnesota Twins signing of Carlos Correa.
Absolutely shocked. I woke up, I think like a lot of folks out there, and was not expecting that whatsoever. And when I first saw it, I don't even remember who had tweeted it out initially, but saw that and thought, well, that can't be right.
Right.
I couldn't believe it. We don't see that type of thing in Minnesota.
No. And I don't know about you, but I hadn't seen anything linking the Twins to Correa. Nothing.
No, it was all Trevor Story originally. And then that kind of wavered. And I was getting to the point where I'm starting to think, did we trade our opening day shortstop to the Yankees over Gary Sanders? Really?
Right.
So, yeah, to see that come out of nowhere,
right,
completely blindsided me.
And there's so many layers to this Correa signing. And as you mentioned, Trevor Story, news breaks Sunday. He signs with the Red Sox, 6 years, $120 million, I think, and opt out after the fourth year possibly. So that's kind of, been finalized as well. But when you look at Correa and we think about, he can opt out after the first year, he can opt out after the second year. What do you think the odds are that Carlos Correa plays all 3 years of this contract with Minnesota?
That's a really good question. I think that's a multi-million-dollar question at this point. It wouldn't. I think it really depends on what do the Twins do this year. I think Correa, he's getting the money that he wants, but he also wants to be on a team that's going to be chasing down pennants. They're going to be going to World Series, that type of thing. The Twins need pitching to be able to do that, and right now we haven't addressed that quite enough. I think we've addressed it a bit, but not quite enough. I don't know. So, like you say, I think there's a few layers to that too. We'll see if he likes it here. We had a shortstop last year in Simmons who clearly didn't really like it here.
Right.
So it's tough to say, but I think it's one of those deals that's really friendly for both sides, both parties, if you will, because it does give him the option to leave if he wants. And then the Twins, they're not guaranteed to have to pay all this money. So, yeah, I think we'll know more as the season goes on, obviously, but it wouldn't shock me if he stuck around for all 3 years.
Right. If the Twins are contenders, if they go to the playoffs this year and show that, I think it becomes more of like a 70-30 proposition that he says, yeah, let's just stick around. Or he could opt out and then re-sign if the Twins decide this is a long-term thing. But, of course, the wild card here is Royce Lewis.
Right. Right, that's a big part. And Austin Martin.
Yeah, and if that's part of probably what the Twins are looking at too, I'm thinking is, if Correa leaves but Lewis is ready, well, awesome, here we go. And then we can spend that money on pitching, an area of need.
Right. I think it's one of those, like, again, going back to both sides of this, I think it's perfect for the Twins in that sense where, they do need kind of that filler in this gap period of a shortstop right now where, Royce Lewis was hurt last year. They just got Austin cured last year in a trade. So both guys probably not MLB ready yet. So what do you do in that meantime? And Polanco's not the answer to that.
No.
Rise is not the answer to that. So you need something. This is a pretty big something.
Yeah, right.
But it gives them that flexibility.
And Arise, with all the moves the Twins have made, he's kind of the odd man out, isn't he? Where, what do you do with Luis Arise? Is he's just your everyday utility guy, kind of filters around, fills in? I don't even know what to think about him anymore.
Yeah, I don't either. Because I think you're right. Right now, he kind of does seem like the odd man out, and I think that the Twins, since they had, what was his name? Gonzalez.
Oh, Marwin Gonzalez, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Marwin Gonzalez, who basically played every position. They've kind of wanted to have someone like that, and I think they'll try to do that with Arise, where he basically can play around the diamond and kind of plug and play and give guys days off, because Baldelli's been really big into trying to get guys their rest and have their days off. So maybe he does something like that. He's just not as good defensively,
right?
As Marwin was. So that's a struggle. But yeah, I think right now, I'd rather see Gio over at third base every day than Arise.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Is it possible that it seems unlikely? It seems really bizarre that the Twins front office had this grand master plan. We're going to trade Mitch Garver. We're going to get this guy from Texas. Everybody's kind of split on, well, is that the right move? And then they flip him right away to the Yankees of all teams. And all of a sudden here comes Carlos Correa. Is Derek Falvey going to say, oh yeah, this is the plan all along? Or things just kind of fell our way somehow or another?
I think if he was a smart guy, if I'm Belby right now, if I'm part of the brain trust, oh, you bet I'm like taking all the credit for that one.
Oh yeah.
We swindled them, It's a great way to keep your job for a little longer.
Well, right. And the Yankees, by all accounts, the Yankee fans are not happy campers these days. The Twins pulled something over on them.
Oh, they did. You swindled the giant empire, the evil empire. And I think that might be one of the best parts of this whole thing. Obviously this makes the Twins better, but to know now, the Yankees don't have the shortstop they want. It's even better when I saw the Boston signing of Trevor Story, because I thought, well, now they're going to pin their ears back and go after Story. For Boston to get them out,
right.
I bet New York is freaking out.
Yeah, it'd be kind of fun to read the papers tomorrow on Monday in New York and see the op-ed columns and everything else. Yeah, it feels, and listen, you and I have been Minnesota sports fans long enough to know that when the Twins play the Yankees, Josh Donaldson's going to hit like 4 home runs in the series. We know that's going to happen. Just guaranteed, because he'll be healthy for one thing, and he'll jack a few out of the stadium. But by the same motive, one has to think that Sanchez, who's been kind of derided in the New York media after having some good years, and he kind of fell behind last couple of years, he's going to have a little motivation too against his former team. So it could kind of go both ways.
Yeah, and I think a big thing for him is just a change of scenery. After a while, like we see that with some players sometimes where they just need to kind of move on and get to a different place. Because when he first got called up by the Yankees, his first 2 seasons he had over 50 home runs in those 2 seasons and was hitting just under 300. And you're looking at a guy that some folks thought, well, this is the next Posada. This guy's going to be around the next 15 years. And obviously, as we know, it hasn't really worked out that way. And I'm interested to see, I don't know how much catching he's going to be doing with the Twins, or if he's going to be is he just going to basically be the replacement of Mitch Garver? It's going to be him and Jeffers just kind of splitting time, or I'm interested to see kind of how that plays out. Because
earlier, in this spring training time, this shortened off season, they were pretty adamant that we're not going to just have one guy. It's not a Nelson Cruz situation for DH.
Right.
That's not going to happen. It'll be to give guys days rest. But Jeffers is so clearly a better defensive shortstop than Sanchez is, and that's a pretty important part of the game that people don't talk about often enough. Everybody wants your catcher to hit a bunch of home runs. Well, Garver wasn't a great defensive catcher either, so you got to kind of pick and choose. And maybe it depends on, I don't know, if Jeffers or Sanchez kind of mesh better with a particular pitcher. We've seen that in the past too. Hey, you're this guy's catcher when he pitches. But yeah, I think Jeffers he'll catch much more often than Sanchez, barring injury, of course. But then you of course have a lesser bat in the lineup. But I don't know. Tim Laudner did all right when he was Twins catcher too. So
right, and the big thing, I always think that the first thing that you want out of a catcher is defense. It's kind of almost like when you think of a second baseman, you don't think of a second baseman that's going to hit 40 home runs. Now, the Twins are really lucky in the fact that Polanco's been an outstanding second baseman and has quite the bat. But, again, catcher, like you say, it's defense. You need a guy that can, one, not have a ton of pass balls, which has been an issue with Gary Sanchez.
Right.
And I think he's led the league twice on pass balls. Actually, take that back, 3 times. So it's something, it's one of those positions, if you talk the old-time baseball guys, now I know people hate that, but you want strong defense right up the middle, right? You want a catcher that's very good defensively. You want a middle infield short and second base that are great defensively, which I think we have now. And then a center fielder that's very good defensively, one in which the Twins, quite frankly, in my opinion, have the best center fielder in ball.
Yes.
So
yep.
we have those pieces now aligned, I think. Right.
Yeah. And so, like we've said, a little bit of pitching yet, and they signed Joe Smith in a relief role. And that to me too is an important little element the guy who can come in the middle innings, put out a fire, maybe eat a few innings if you need them, and that's starting pitching still important, but it seems the way the trends in Major League Baseball are they're bringing those relievers in a lot sooner than they ever have before, and that's just as important at times.
Yeah, 100%. And I liked the Joe Smith signing. My father and I texted him about, hey, did you see that Correa sign? At first, when I sent him a text, it was, hey, did you see the big signing? And he goes, Joe Smith? I was like, I'll look a little further. But Joe Smith, I do think, is a good signing, too, just in the simple fact that the Twins are going to have a lot of young arms, I think, this year. Now we got some, veteran starters, Sonny Gray and Dylan Bundy, but that bullpen, as you said, I mean, who can come in and put out a fire? Duffy last year, we saw that a few times out of him. Taylor Rogers had kind of a tough year, but kind of expecting a bounce back season from him. But with Joe Smith, it also shows like the front office, that they're not blind to what the situation sitting out left center is. They need more arms out there. They need proven arms, quite frankly. And that's what they're getting out of Joe Smith. It's not someone that's, we're not wowing or going crazy, and the Star Trib isn't, going to be flying a reporter to go meet Joe Smith. But he is going to be a guy we're going to see a lot of this summer, and should eat up a lot of innings and kind of be a damage control guy, I think. Right.
Because it seems like these relievers, they become a little mentally fragile at times. If things aren't going their way, it's downhill in a very quick hurry. And I think we saw that with Rogers a little bit last year, and a little bit of a change. I agree with. I think a bounce back year for Rogers. I also like the idea that I don't think we necessarily have somebody who say, here's your ninth inning guy. That puts a lot of pressure on. And again, unless you have a Kenley Jansen, somebody like that, you're just not going to do that. You're going to kind of base it on who you're playing, who's pitching well for you, and matchups and all that stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this team is very analytical when it looks at that. Wes Johnson and Rocco both. And I always think of pitchers kind of like golfers, where all it takes is one shank and everything could be down to two. Especially when you start looking at relievers and late game guys, just because you don't get to go back out there next inning and try to fix it. You don't have 5, 6, 7 innings to, you give up a run in the first, like Brad Rack used to do all the time, and then pitch a really good game for the next 5 innings, and everything's fine. No, you give up that one home run, it's a terrible day. You blew the game. So yeah, I mean, the pressure's real, and it's, it's not something that is going to go well all the time, and that's hard to deal with.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I mean, the joke has always been for years that the best hitters in baseball fail 7 out of 10 times. And we don't hold them quite to that same level. But if you're a pitcher and you fail 7 out of 10 times, you're out of a job.
Right. Pretty quick.
Yeah. I mean, if 7 of your 10 pitches are out of the strike zone, you're in big trouble right there too. So a big difference there. Hitting and pitching wise, and that's just part of the beauty of baseball too, I think, is there's so many different little elements to the game that make a difference. But and who knows, by the time that this airs on Wednesday, we're sitting here chatting on a Sunday afternoon, the Twins could have traded for a pitcher, could have signed. So there aren't a lot out there to sign, but of course the hot rumors are Oakland, possibility of getting Montes from Oakland, and but what are you going to give up for him? That's the question. Oakland clearly in a rebuilding phase, and maybe now's the time, because there's another guy where you can get him, and he's only got 1 year left on his contract, I think, if I remember right. But if things go well this year, you can re-sign some of these guys and kind of see what happens. So
sounds like that is, because I think it was earlier last week, there were kind of 2 A's pitchers. It sounds like it is Frankie Montes that the Twins are going to continuing to pursue. Which, yeah, if you can get him in here, he's got, I think, the 2 years under his contract still, or like
is it
control.
Okay.
And he actually, so last year he made 32 starts, and that led the majors and games started. And so that's a guy, I think I talked about this last week on Triple Play Tuesdays, that I really hope the Twins go and get, simply because there's a guy that's going to get the ball every fifth day. He struck out over 200 batters last year, something we don't see a lot around here, and did a good job on a good Oakland team, but not a great Oakland team. And I think the biggest question is, what are you going to have to give up for him?
Right.
Because, like you said, Oakland is, their good players became the superstars. Time to ship them out. They're going to be looking for those young guys that can start having an impact right away, moving forward.
Right. And clearly the Twins have shown already this offseason, and getting Gray in that trade, they're willing to give up hot prospects, number one pick,
Right.
In Chase Petty to get Gray and get somebody established there. So maybe the time is now. I hold out this hope. I was a senior in high school the last time the Twins won the World Series, which tells everybody just how old I am. But maybe the time is now. We're to saying, okay, we have to make that move. We have solid players, so they're making all these moves, and it's something we're just not used to seeing out of the Minnesota Twins.
No, I think that's what makes it so much fun with this front office. And we've seen this a few times. I mean, last year when they signed Donaldson, that was really exciting. That was 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah.
But we've seen them make moves to better the team. They continue to do that, and that is something where, I mean, for so long, I grew up watching the Piranhas play.
Oh, yeah.
And small ball that was, and it worked. They got them to the playoffs and won a few divisions here, but that's not what this front office is looking for. They want big impact right away, not those kind of diamonds in the rough, if you will. And so that it's exciting and fun. It I think kind of brings back. I mean, I completely forgot that baseball was locked out. Honestly, like these moves have just made me so excited for the Twin season coming up that it doesn't even matter anymore.
Right. Yeah. It does seem like a long time ago, and really it was just a couple of weeks. And
right.
Yeah, because I had speculated prior to the lockout ending that, holy cow, the Twins are going to be behind the eight ball. They normally take forever to make moves. They kind of wait for the market to sort itself out. Well, they have been, in a sense, helping set the market in some areas. Not signing every big name free agent, but you get one after you see a few other moves. Freddie Freeman going to the Dodgers and some of these other shakeups across, and now Story going to the Red Sox. But when the Twins are in the thick of it, that's just, I have to imagine that other fan bases, especially in the Central Division, are going, well, wait a minute, what's happening here? The White Sox can't be thinking, well, we're going to repeat very easily right now.
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, I got to imagine there's plenty of fans on the South Side that are going, well, what are they doing? Like, where did this come from?
Right.
Because quite frankly, before that, if we had trotted out the same team we had last year, there's no one else that would compete with the White Sox this year, and it would be really easy to kind of skate their way to another Central Division title and another playoff run for them. And they're obviously retooling too. They've made some moves as well, but the Twins have definitely made a bigger splash, and I think now pull both of themselves right back into that discussion in the Central.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to switch gears here. Let's go from Target Field over to U.S. Bank, because the Vikings have certainly been making plenty of news as well this offseason, and things are continuing there. First, the Kirk Cousins extension. Your thoughts on that as far as keeping him around for 2 more years now?
Yeah, no, I think it was the only option they had. I've been very vocal on Triple Play Tuesdays of, people need to understand that that's what's going to happen. The Vikings really didn't have another option, honestly. There isn't another quarterback out there that they could go get that was going to be better than Kirk Cousins. Kellen Mond was not the right draft pick, in my opinion. And so they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, and so now the only option, because of the cap space issue, was to be able to extend Kurt. And that's something they obviously didn't. I don't think the Vikings necessarily wanted to do. But I think with a new front office there, a new coach, the reason the Vikings haven't been good the last few seasons is not because of Kirk Cousins. There are much bigger issues, and it's on the other side of the ball that they really need to kind of fix. Kirk doesn't play defense. I always see after like every Sunday of a Viking game, like, oh, it would have been really great if Kirk would have made that kick, like silly things like that.
Right,
and,
right.
I'm I guess in some senses, a Kurt apologist in a way. And I'm sure people say that about me, but, I've said for a very long time, good quarterbacks get drafted and then they don't become free agents. Outside of, Brett Favre and Tom Brady, because they played so long.
Right.
But, you're not going to go out in the free agent market and find anyone better than Kurt. And I don't see, sure there have been some trades here this season, like Russell Wilson going to Denver now. But, the rumors of Russell coming to Minnesota, no one was going to want to take Kurt's contract. So
right.
He's our guy. We're stuck with him.
Well,
whether you like it or not.
And I had said on this program a few times that I was all in favor of trading him if you had the right kind of a deal, if there'd be somebody willing to take him. And at first I had advocated, I thought Baker Mayfield, with the money you saved, you could sign some people that would help the overall team. And of course, Baker now, well, the whole thing about Deshaun Watson going to Cleveland, of all places.
So weird.
If you're Deshaun Watson, aren't you saying, well, this is the end of my career? Just the way things go in Cleveland, they have one good year and fall apart. I was really shocked by that. There were of course a few rumors that maybe the Vikings would make a move for him, trade Cousins. But what else? You would have had to give up 2 number 1 picks to get him.
Right.
It just, I don't know if they're willing to do that. It certainly seems like the new regime is saying we still think we can win. That's like you said though, defense is still an issue, and there's some things to work out there yet. It'll be really interesting to see who they get to fill some of those gaps, because Harrison Smith's not getting any younger. The whole Danielle Hunter situation is kind of a fly in the ointment as well, and it's just hard to as you say, Kirk is a good quarterback, and they have some of the best. Well, after Devontae Adams got traded from the Packers to the Raiders, the Vikings wide receiver core automatically became the best in the NFC North.
Right, by a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it, like, when we were looking for a GM and a head coach, and I imagine, like, if you're from the outside looking in at the Vikings and aren't a fan or aren't a part of the organization, I have to imagine it's a really, you look at it and you go, wow, that looks like a great job. Simply because of some of the players that you do have already. Like, you already have your quarterback, you already have your running back, you already have several receivers that are going to be very good. You have a young receiver on top of that, who has been taken the league by storm in Justin Jefferson. This team looks like it has all the pieces to be very, very good. Some of the pieces that are missing, though, pretty big ones, like basically a secondary.
Right.
They, right now, almost don't have one. So I do think that's going to be a big focus for them, especially in this draft. There are a couple good corners coming out of this draft. How do you fix that stuff? What do you do on the defensive line? The offensive line forever has always been an issue. Since Steve Hutchinson was here, it hasn't been very good. So, there are a lot of questions, but you can see that, the core of this team, there is a good core, and there are good players to be able to build this thing around. Just finding them and how to get that, because, again, the cap issue, that's tough. But I have to imagine it's a place that people wanted to go.
Right. Well, yes. I mean, the top of the line training facilities, stadium, fan base, everything. I just have to imagine too. When you look at last season, to me, this Vikings team was better than their record showed, and I think coaching had a lot to do with some of the losses. I think Zimmer, he gets a little too emotionally involved sometimes, throwing a challenge flag when he shouldn't. Time management was not great. And I liked Zimmer overall as a coach, but the last couple of years, you have to evolve as a coach too, and I don't think he was willing to do that. And there are some games that we should have won that we didn't. Of course, there were some games we won that we probably should have lost too. I'm thinking of the first Detroit game.
Right.
So it's, I don't know. I was welcoming a Zimmer change out of town, and I think hopefully O'Connell's the guy who's going to come in and take those ones that should be wins and turn them into wins.
I mean, there were a ton of games last year where it was one possession games that the Vikes lost that easily could have been wins, and all of a sudden they're a playoff team. And I do think that in the long haul, when we're looking at from like a fandom point, that's probably good now. Looking back on it, that they did not have a winning season and that they did lose those games, because it did basically pushes them out the door. It got Spielman away. I think there hasn't been enough talk about. I mean, a lot of folks were ripping on Zim all year, which I think was fair last year. But Spielman, to me, like the last 5 years, has basically been running the team just to save his job. It felt like.
Yeah.
Being mediocre was perfectly fine all the time for him, because it kept him, in his chair. So I do think it's kind of a blessing in disguise. Because yes, this team is way too good not to be at least contending with the Packers, and should be in the playoffs. I think every year, just solely on some of the superstar power that they do have.
Well, and as we've seen in the NFL, if you make the playoffs, crazy things can happen. I don't think anybody would have predicted Cincinnati being in the Super Bowl even at the start of the playoffs. I don't think that was even close to being a big pick for people, and there they are. They played well all throughout. Couldn't pull it off against the Rams, but the Rams then, on the other hand, are that team that they're like the fantasy football team. We're going to spend money. We're going to get all these guys, and we hope we do it, and they did. But I think the Rams are. I don't think they're going to be what they were. They signed Stafford to an extension here. They traded Robert Woods. Who's coming off an injury, but I don't know. It feels like Stafford, who's always been a very good quarterback, was starting to be on a little bit of the downhill trend this year. Not quite what he had been in the past, but just enough to win it when it counted. And I think the NFC is very wide open this year. I mean, Tampa Bay clearly will be good again with Tom Brady back. But I don't know. Name me another team that's really, really scary right now in the NFC. I can't think of one that I think the Vikings couldn't beat if they get some defense.
Right, yeah. And that is, I think that's going to be the big story coming out of the offseason into, teams going to preseason, what have you, is like, wow, look at the AFC, which for a long time, it was just ran by the Patriots and Tom. So it's going to be the AFC West. They are stacked. I literally, like you say, I can't think of an NFC team off the top of my brain that really is a huge threat. Outside of Tampa Bay.
Yeah. Dallas is falling apart day by day.
Right. They always are.
Yeah. Yes, they beat us last year with their backup quarterback, but that was kind of just the way that the season went. The NFC West is very good. The Rams are going to be good again. San Francisco, right. Arizona are going to be good, but none of them, They don't
freak me out, though. It's not like sitting down and thinking that, you're going to have to play the Chiefs or, you're going to have to, even Oakland. Oakland's going to be really good this year.
Yeah.
There's just not a team that you sit back and you look at and you think, well, they must be the favorites in the NFC. That's the team that's going to run the tables.
Right.
There really isn't one.
No.
I mean, the Saints, I guess, what are they going to be doing?
Yeah,
there's a lot of question marks, I guess.
Right. Well, that's what makes the NFL so great. That's why we sit and talk about it a lot. That's why millions and millions of people watch it, because you don't know. Last year was just a crazy year all around, and so I think that, and of course I've been the Packer apologists out there think that now they're saying trading Davante Adams was the best move ever. He's on his way out. The guy's 30 years old. He's arguably the best receiver in the NFL, top 3 at the very least. Who knows? And Aaron Rodgers had to have known about that was a possibility when he re-signed. I mean, there's no way he's not kept in that loop.
I have to assume so. And I wonder, how much of that kind of played a part in him going, kind of waffling back and forth on if he wanted to go back to Green Bay or not. Because, what's he going to do now? I mean, he's a really good quarterback, and I think he's one of those quarterbacks that makes wide receivers better. There's a lot of receivers that make quarterbacks a lot better than they are, but I think it's the opposite way around with Rodgers. But, their hands are kind of tied now. I mean, they're going to have to draft a wide receiver.
Right.
They need something. I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah. When Alan Lazard is your number 1 receiver?
Not good.
No, I mean, he's serviceable. He does some things every now and then, but suddenly the Packers become much more beatable. Because you just assumed Rodgers was going to hit Adams. They're going to make big drives and find ways to win games. And now suddenly that part is gone. And I can't imagine Aaron Rodgers being happy to say, well, we're going to run the ball more. I mean, they have 2 very good running backs too, but that's not how Aaron Rodgers works either. So
no, not at all.
No. So it's to me, the NFC Central is wide open. I do think the Detroit Lions make a little bit of a jump this year. They're not real active on the free agent market, but I think they have the right coaching staff in place, and they have some of the pieces in place, and they, like the Vikings last year, they lost some games that there's no reason they should have lost. And if their guys get a little bit better and they draft well, suddenly I see a little bit of a jump from the Lions. Bears, they're the Bears. I don't know.
Right.
Justin Fields could become a great quarterback, but I think he's a little ways away from there too, from being too worrisome.
Yeah. I mean, neither of those teams scare me if I'm the Vikings. I do agree. I think that Detroit, really the only way to go for them is up. And like you say, I mean, they weren't as bad as a team as their record showed last year. I do like the coaching that they have over there, and they're going to be better. But again, are they going to win the Central? Probably not.
No.
Are the Bears? No. It's going to be the Vikes or the Pack, and I mean, I think right now, just because of last season and how everything played out, you got to give the edge to the Packers. But the Vikings are right there.
Right. Yep. We'll have to see how the draft turns out, and that'll probably go a long way toward determining that for both of those teams. So, one more stop up in Minneapolis, and I don't watch a whole lot of NBA basketball anymore. I much prefer high school and college basketball, but you can't help but to sit up and take notice of the Minnesota Timberwolves this year. There is something different about this team, and I think one of the reasons I've fallen away from the NBA is the Timberwolves were just so bad for so long. Why in the world would I watch that? But the word I read in the Star Tribune this morning was swag. But that's what they're all about, swag. And they seem to have that. For a team that's the 7th seed in the West right now, they've got a lot of positive vibes going.
Yeah, and they have a game on Monday, and again they have another 4-game win streak, and I do think that's the right word to say with them. They do play with a lot of swag. I mean, we've seen them against the Lakers have no problem getting into Westbrook's face and letting him know when he has a bad shot. The Bucks last night, Pat Beverly and George Hill kind of got into it, and actually both end up being tossed from the game after the first quarter. They're playing with this kind of just, hey, we're gonna beat you. We're gonna find a way, and we're gonna let you know that we're gonna beat you. And I love watching that. I mean, that's fun.
Right. Well, and they're doing what past Timberwolves teams didn't do. They're beating, by and large, the teams they should beat.
Right.
And then knocking off some teams above them, and that's how you become a playoff team. Is you can't just beat the teams below you, or you don't make the playoffs. But they swept the Bucks this year. Granted, not everybody's healthy for Milwaukee right now, but yeah, they're going out there night to night, and they're taking advantage at times of the teams that aren't completely healthy. But that's what you have to do in the NBA or in any professional sport, really. Nobody's going to apologize if Karl Anthony Towns is out injured. They're going to go out and try to beat you without your best player. But Towns is playing at a level, it's unbelievable. I mean, would you agree he's in the running that he could be all NBA this year?
I think so. I mean, especially like here in the second half. I mean, he's kind of put the team on his back at times with Ant being out for a little bit. Russell having some issues and being out for kind of a couple extended periods of time. Excuse me. Yeah, he's been the man. This is the Cat that I think everyone expected when we drafted him many moons ago, and he's showing it now. He can do it all. He's been one of the more fun guys to kind of watch during this second half run.
Right, and I think when I watch bits here and there, and I read the stories and stuff, coaching has a lot to do with this. Chris Finch has figured out that happy medium of I'm the boss, but I'm going to let you do your thing. And that, for these highly paid athletes, I think that's a pretty fine line to walk.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to walk that line because, it's not college where, I mean, you see some of these coaches, like, I mean, Tom Izzo, where he'll get all over his guys. You can't necessarily do that in the NBA or at any professional level. These guys are being paid, right? And they'll just say, well, I don't need to listen to that. I'll demand a trade or I'll go somewhere else. But at the same time, I think we saw kind of the flip side of that with Saunders, and was maybe too much of a player's coach. Where it, like who's running the show around here? Is it the guards or the prisoners?
Right,
so,
yeah.
At times it definitely seemed like that, where he kind of just let him do whatever. Where Chris Finch, he kind of knows like that time to be tough, but also knows like when to kind of let loose a little bit too. So he's doing a great job. I didn't know much about him, and I'll be honest with you, I'm the same way with the Wolves. This is the first year I've kind of really been following them since Jimmy left, just because, yes, for a long time and for many years with the Wolves, they're just hard to watch. I don't want to watch that. But this year, I do. I want to tune in. I want to see these guys.
Yep.
So,
and I speculated a week ago, I don't think anybody wants to play them come playoff time. I don't think you would feel saying like a 2 versus 7. Yeah, I feel pretty good. We should handle this. That can't be sitting easy. And really, they still have a legit chance to move up to the 6th seed.
Yeah, only half a game behind the Nuggets right now.
Yeah, and they have a tough stretch here. Most of their teams they play in the last part of the season are playoff teams. But again, we'll see a lot out of the Wolves then. Can you play with these teams? Because if you can, you will not have to play in the play-in tournament. And if you can't, you'll be there, and you're not going to drop. You're going to be the 7 at the very, very lowest in that 7 through 10 play-in. But it's interesting. It's fun. It's good to see. People will be interested in NBA basketball even as the Major League Baseball season is starting here too, and that's something very different here in Minnesota from a long time. So
yeah, it really is. And I think too, like with Minnesota, I've said this on Tuesdays before. I mean, it's a quiet basketball city. It's a place where we have lots of great basketball in Minneapolis and across the whole state. And I think it's something that a lot of folks don't know, but are starting to realize when you start like tuning into March Madness and there's Minnesota kids all over playing. there's a lot of basketball fans here. I mean, they deserve it. Now, I wouldn't include myself in being a huge basketball fan. I'm definitely the bandwagon fan. I'm jumping on because I know they're going to be good. But, for all those people, I have buddies that love the Wolves and go to tons of games with the Wolves, and this is great for them. I mean, this doesn't happen very often, so it's exciting, and I think it's about time.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Shane Moore, thank you so much for joining us this week. You can listen to Shane Tuesday night, 7 o'clock Central, Triple Play Tuesdays on 365sportscast.com. Glad you could be with us, Shane, and wish you the best of luck, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, thanks a ton, Mark. We'll have to do this. Maybe I'll have you over on a Tuesday night, too, one of these nights.
Sounds good. All right, Shane Moore. We'll be right back. Before we get back to the program, I want to give a special shout-out to my son, Anton. All the equipment that he has here hooked up to our computer, the programs and everything, that's all him. He kind of helped show me the ropes as I've undertaken this new endeavor with the radio program, so I appreciate all his help on helping this old guy figure out a few new tricks as we go along. And now it's time for the State of Minnesota Sports. Well, Shane and I, as you just listened to, certainly covered a lot of really big, important things that happened in the state of Minnesota sports. We visited on Sunday, and so as I put together this final program here Tuesday evening for you to listen on Wednesday or after, much more has happened in the interim. We'll start with the Minnesota Wild, who made a big splash in the trade market and picked up goalie Marc-Andre Fleury from the Chicago Blackhawks. An area of concern was goalie for the Wild. So perhaps this is a move by the Wild to say, hey, we're really serious about this. These ups and downs we've had this year have to change a little bit. And they've played a little bit better in this past week, have moved back into a spot where they would be, I believe, the number 3 seed if the playoffs were to start today. Again, a ways to go, but that'd be the spot that they want to be in moving into the playoffs. So hopefully this goalie move solidifies things for them. And my understanding is they've got a young guy kind of down in the developmental leagues that they think might be the real deal coming up in a year or two. So hopefully this is that stopgap, helps them get places that they want to be, Stanley Cup finals, of course, and we'll just have to wait and see. But a good move, it looks like, by the Minnesota Wild. I mentioned last week how our Gopher women's basketball team wasn't done yet. They had been invited to the WNIT and upset Green Bay in their first game. A nice little win for Lindsay Whalen's team. However, this past Sunday, they went out to South Dakota State and lost to the Jackrabbits in the second round. But still, progress by the Gophers, a couple more games under the belt, a little more experience, and hopefully that really plays a role for them moving forward. The prediction here from Carly Wagner a few weeks ago was that next year will be a big turning point, and she thinks the Gophers are going to make a splash in the Big Ten. The Timberwolves, Shane and I talked a little bit about that. They lost a tough one at Dallas the other night, and that was a huge game because that would have moved them into the 6th spot and really like half a game behind Dallas, and suddenly they're still sitting there in the 7th spot, and they're within striking distance of Denver, but boy, what a boost that would have been to jump there and kind of control your destiny moving forward. Some tough calls down the stretch, but again, as Coach Chris Finch said after the game, you put yourself in those positions where a call goes against you and it can cost you. You got to play better leading up to that. The Vikings splash in the free agent market. Zadarius Smith, he will be a Minnesota Viking. I believe it's 4 years, $42 million, a huge deal. And you put him and Daniil Hunter, who looks like he's staying with the Vikings now, together, arguably one of the best pass rushes in the NFL. And suddenly, the things that Shane and I were talking about with the Vikings making a jump, having the best wide receiver core in the division, second best quarterback yet. Aaron Rodgers still is a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins. And if the Vikings can put some more pieces together defensively, suddenly it's a real dogfight for the NFC North. And I think all the mock drafts show them drafting a cornerback in the first round. Certainly cornerback is an area of need. And if they can draft a guy who can start right away, that changes things in a hurry, and suddenly you got that pass rush up front. You got guys who can defend in the secondary, and now what are you going to do? How are you going to beat the Minnesota Vikings, who are going to have a high-powered, high-octane offense under Kevin O'Connell? And the pieces are in place. The NFC really is, there for the taking. You've got Tom Brady, but as good as he has been, every year that he gets a little bit older is another year that you might say, well, this could be the year that finally there's a little bit of a decrease. He loses a step, whatever the case might be. We'll have to see, but I think that the NFC is there as an opportunity for the Vikings to make some moves when it comes to that. I don't know about you, but I spent an awful lot of time last Thursday through Sunday watching basketball, watching college basketball, my favorite sporting event to sit down and watch year in and year out. As big a baseball guy as I am, boy, that first weekend of NCAA tournament, and now that they're really promoting the women's tournament just as much, I was flipping back and forth all the time, and quite often I found that some of the women's games were much more interesting than the men's games that were going on, and just had a great time watching all that. Last week I made my predictions on this program about who I had going into the Final Four for both men's and women's. Boy, don't look at my women's bracket because that fell apart in a quick hurry. I predicted Baylor winning it all, and they got upset this last week. It was weird to watch. Both Baylor and Iowa women, who I have both had in the Final Four, losing on their home court in the second round. Unbelievable. But for so many years, the women's tournament, there weren't nearly as many upsets, but there have been plenty of them this time, and even like Belmont almost knocked off Tennessee on their home floor, and really should have. They just couldn't take care of the ball down the stretch. But a lot of things. So the women's bracket, we don't want to talk about that. I still have Stanford and UConn in the Final Four, but that thing fell apart for me. The men's side, that was a little trickier. I'm just double checking here. I got 10 out of 16 in the Sweet 16 in place. I have all four of my Final Four teams still there. 3 out of the 4. Gonzaga, Arizona, and Kansas. Baylor just really bit me this year, both men and women. Baylor got knocked off, and I've got Arizona beating Gonzaga in the finals. But Gonzaga's look beatable too. All these games are so close because teams they scout so much better and do a lot of great things. It was really bizarre to sit down. Monday night I could still watch some basketball because the women's kind of moved on there. But then all of a sudden, there's no basketball on for a couple of nights, and it's kind of a little bit of a sports abyss. There's spring training games for baseball, but you watch the Minnesota Twins and you see the things they're doing in spring training, and it's up and down. And you don't read too much into spring training. You're stretching arms out, which they have to do in much more of a hurry than they have in the past, and get these guys ready to go. But I really think that what you're going to see to start the baseball season is a lot shorter starts from the starters, which has been kind of decreasing in the past years anyway, and getting to that bullpen and trying to get guys stretched out and see what they can do, because you certainly don't want anybody to get hurt. But really, they've only got a couple weeks to get ready here yet for that season. So I think there's plenty going on the sidelines and the backfield and stuff, but I don't read a whole lot into it. The Twins struggled at first offensively, then they get a lot of hits and they're giving up a lot of runs. And again, there's a long way to go here. And now that Carlos Correa's officially in camp and everybody's kind of settled in, and my hope is by the time that you hear this program, maybe they've made that move for the starting pitcher that we're hoping, a Frankie Montas or something like that, but we'll just have to wait and see. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the state of Minnesota sports. We'll finish up this week with Minnesota sports history. On March 23rd in 1984, Wayne Gretzky set the NHL record for goals scored with 802. That doesn't directly impact Minnesota sports, but certainly worth mentioning. The great one, Wayne Gretzky. In 2011, on March 23rd, repair work began on the roof of the Metrodome, which had collapsed during the winter. It would take 10-hour days, 6 days a week, to get it done by August 1st. Good thing the Twins had moved to Target Field by that time. On March 24th, in 1988, the Twins traded Billy Beane to the Detroit Tigers. Beane, of course, not known for his great Major League Baseball career, but known better as the general manager of the Oakland Athletics in the Moneyball tradition that we've all known so well over the years. On March 25th in 1983, Sal Butera was traded from the Twins to the Tigers. He would return for 1987 and be part of that World Series championship team. On March 26th in 1945, George Mikan led DePaul to the NIT championship, scoring 34 points. Back then, the NIT was much bigger than the NCAA championship for basketball. And of course, George Mikan, the Minnesota connection, is that he played for the Minneapolis Lakers for many years. On March 26th in 1989, Keith Atherton, who was a member of the 87 Twins World Series team, pitcher, was traded to Cleveland for Carmelo Castillo. And in 2021, on March 26th, the Twins announced that Coach Mike Bell had passed away from kidney cancer, a very beloved coach for the Twins and other teams throughout the years. On March 27th in 2005, Bob Casey passed away, age 79. At the time, he had been the only Twins announcer, and anybody who attended a Twins game, especially in the Metrodome, could listen to Bob Casey announce the no smoking in the Metrodome, no smoking, and his iconic calls of Kirby Puckett and others certainly live on, the great Bob Casey. March 27th in 2010, the first baseball game ever was played at Target Field between the University of Minnesota and Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech won 9-1, but Terry Steinbach from New Ulm, Minnesota, threw out the ceremonial first pitch. Over 37,000 fans attended and broke in Target Field. On March 28th, in 1992, the Twins traded Paul Sorrento, who had been part of the 91 World Series team, to Cleveland. Sorrento started his career pretty hot, but then cooled off and didn't really produce at a very high level for many years. In 1996, on March 28th, Kirby Puckett woke up and couldn't see out of his right eye. He was diagnosed with glaucoma and never played again. A sad day in the history of Kirby Puckett and the Minnesota Twins. And in 2019, on March 28th, the home opener for the Twins was a 2-0 win over Cleveland, as Jose Barrios set an opening day Twins record by striking out 10. A very quick-moving game, too, as well. About 2.5 hours, and they got that one completed. Well, that's going to do it for this week of Whatever Flips Your Waffle. Another helping of waffles is all done here at 365sportscast.com. Glad you joined us. Hope you'll continue to tune in each week right here, 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central on Wednesdays. Remember, the original broadcast is those Wednesdays, but if you can't tune in for that, you can always check out the rebroadcasts Thursday at 10, Friday at 7, Saturday at 10, Monday at 8, and Tuesday at 10 o'clock, all Eastern times. Also shows archived to YouTube. And remember, too, if you want to be part of the process, if you want to help me with some ideas, if you perhaps think you should be interviewed, email me, waffleflipper22@gmail.com, or message me on Twitter at Mr. D1973. Next week, we'll be back with more in the world of Minnesota sports. Will the Twins have their roster set ready to go for the beginning of the year, or is there more to come? What are the Vikings doing to get ready for the NFL draft? How about the Timberwolves? Have they moved up in the rankings? Same with the Wild as far as playoff positioning goes. I'll have another special guest to delve into all this and more. Thanks again for joining me. This is Mark Domeyer signing off with Syrup.